Adam, uh, Adam, your story was extremely riveting. I mean, when I heard about your journey as an entrepreneur, and were you an employee at any point in time, or were you always an
Very
entrepreneur?
briefly.
Very briefly.
Yes.
Okay, right. Okay, Adam started off with a very important question, which is, what exactly is talent management? I mean, all companies, if you look at it, you have some sort of grouse, a problem, you go to HR, and HR sort of represents the entity which is supposed to handle employee issues, employees, their potential, their long-term potential for the future. So, Veti, let me start with you. Within the Indian context, how would you describe talent management in today's context, given the kind of explosion that we are seeing? And at the same time, we are seeing a huge sort of a talent mismatch, so to speak, between the demand which is there and the supply which is coming in.
Well, on a lighter vein, I remember in the IT companies, there used to be a board which said that trespassers would be recruited. And this was the phenomena, and it continues. Just to get some numbers in perspective, folks. In this country, we have close to 1.5 million students who pass out of engineering every year. Yeah, and different studies tell us that half of them, or more than half of them, are not really employable in that sense of the word. So from my perspective, I think given that, and I think, Adam, you alluded to it, that we have a huge population and demographic dividend for this country is going to rule the world, is what everyone tells us. So essentially, if you look at it in this thing, that you have to get your people right skilled to become employable. So that's the first thing, and people like us from the education institutional background have a large role to play in curriculum design, in involving with the academia and the industry working together to see that you get a better quality of ready to deploy people. And the model also changes and morphs, because the change is happening so rapidly today that every 5 years, every 6 years, we need to reinvent ourselves. Otherwise, what you picked up at some point of time quickly gets dated.
Right.
And again, I'm sure folks in this room would agree. 6, 7 years back, not too long in history, we all lived in a world which had no LinkedIn, no Twitter, no Facebook, no 4G, no cloud computing. And today, we will actually get into a withdrawal syndrome if we don't have any of these. Every one of us is involved in using one or more of these effectively to manage whatever we run.
Right.
So there is a need to reinvent ourselves. And since you mentioned Indian ethos, I think my view is that adaptability to change and learn is very significantly available in this country. It's a matter of just harnessing this thing, making it available, so that people can take it on.
Because I think it's a story which many of us have faced at some point, being employees, that somewhere we feel maybe we aren't, a lot of the talent is falling through the cracks, and especially as companies gain scale. I mean, you're part of a startup, you know the founder, and you establish that relationship, and he sees the potential in you. But as the company gains scale and size, you somehow fall through the cracks. Yeah. Bipin, how is it addressed in a company like Airbus? You have a large presence here in India, but at the same time it has a very European ethos, so to speak, but you've also set up systems. So how do you address the issue of talent management here in India?
I think so. We are one of the good example. So let me first tell about what is the talent management important. Personally, I feel today it is very important, not as an employee, as an employer, but also as an organization, and also for the growth of the country. Today, if any country is expecting about the growth in the GDP, that without talent management it cannot happen. So that's the one thing. Number two.
So you're saying it is recognized.
It's recognized.
It's not simply a tick in the box.
No, it is recognized. Otherwise, it is very difficult, and especially I can tell about India, where the unemployment is quite high. It's not there is a deficit, lack of manpower, but it is more of a skill gap.
Right.
So skill gap is quite huge when we see in any of the market. We see that 35% to 40% there is unemployment rate in all the countries globally, but then there is a lot of vacancies are open in all the organization.
True.
and these vacancies is open only because of skill gap only.
So you're saying it's only because of skill gap, but not
Skill gap.
That's the primary reason.
Yeah.
Adam, let me bring you in here because within the Indian context, and I think I include myself. We are part of the generation where you have a talk with your boss. He likes you. There's a lot of subjectivity involved in how your career is going to progress. And here you're coming in with a software's a solution which is on the cloud. So how do you really sort of go about, when you came up with the idea, for instance, at Cornerstone, what was the light bulb moment for you? Because even today, talent management in most companies, Indian companies, is managed at a very people level, at a very subjective level.
That's right. So I want to start just by correcting
Right.
something that was said. So talent management today is not really an HR function.
Right.
Talent management is a management function. And so our users are typically every single employee in the company, because every manager is responsible for managing their people. Talent management is really just another way of saying people management. And it's a function of every person in the company. In terms of why it makes sense to use software to manage some of these processes is actually quite simple. If you think about the history of enterprise software, we had first automated our financials because it became too complex to run a multinational corporation through paper and pen. We then managed our supply chains because it was more efficient to manage inventories in financial systems through automation. We then managed candidate relationship management and customer relationship management. We really started to look at Salesforce automation. We manage payroll and benefits, all getting automated. So really every aspect of the enterprise was automated except for one,
Right.
which was the management of people. And yet, if you look at the Fortune 2000 today, almost 80% of all expense on average is people, right? The cost of payroll, the cost of benefits, the cost of infrastructure to support those people. It's all about people. And so why would we go through the time and expense of automating every aspect of the enterprise except the one that's the most important asset in the organization?
But how do you bring about that satisfaction, again, when you talk about people management? Because
Right.
some might say, and Betty, bring in your insights here, because some might say that till I do not have that person-to-person interaction, one is you automate it to an extent, but beyond that.
Perfect. So
Yes.
the automation is not to replace the people interaction. The automation is actually quite the opposite. It's to enforce the people interaction. So often we'll work with a client who does performance management. They set goals for the employee and they do performance reviews conceptually, but there are two problems. The first is the goals are not at all aligned with the goals of the company. Each manager is setting individual goals for the individual employees, but they're not aligning the goals to the goals of their manager and their manager's manager and the executive team and the board.
Let me bring in Vaiti at this point. Is that a common problem that we see, a common challenge being faced within Indian companies, wherein there is a bit of a disconnect?
No, I mean, I'm taking on from what Adam's saying. The sage at the stage, as what we used to call it in teaching those days. I think things have changed. We run an online university, as an example, out of Kuala Lumpur. And it's fascinating that we have people from different parts of the globe, both enrolling themselves to learn, and more importantly, the faculty are available dispersed across the globe again. And imagine, as an example, if there's a faculty who he or she is very strong in subject A, and this person is sitting in another geography, in a conventional mode, you wouldn't be able to access that knowledge. And out here, this person sitting somewhere else, but he or she is giving you that much window to teach. So, and it's not, I'm going back, it's not an either or really. I support what he's saying for the simple reason that hybrid learning in my view is really what it is. It's not an online replacing the wise teacher, if you will. It's
Right.
actually somewhere in between.
But go back to the days when you were managing, the BPO, and huge numbers of young
Yeah.
kids out there and a lot of aspirations, impatience, and so how would technology really help in addressing some of those issues that have been spoken about so far?
I think that's again a very good. Let's take the BPO example, the type of timing that these kids keep. They don't have an opportunity to further their qualification or their knowledge on subjects if they have to make an advancement in their life. And then somebody like Coursera comes into the world and it's completely disruptive. Coursera comes in and says, these professors from Stanford,
Right.
they say we will teach you the best courses with a great faculty and go online and learn this. I think it's a huge benefit to some of these people who cannot physically access a classroom,
Okay,
but they can learn too.
But these are kids at just starting out their jobs,
Yeah.
and really the problems emerge as you go deeper and higher up, so to
Yeah.
speak, Bipin, and middle management, and then you sort of hit a wall or hit that wall of frustration, so to speak. I'm speaking as an employee here. What's been your experience? How is your company utilizing technology to overcome some of that?
Yeah, actually when we started in Bangalore, our engineering center in 2007, we were very small with 25 engineers. So it was a big challenge how to make successful ourselves in India. And now today we are 500 engineers with 4% attrition only, which is one of the unique in Bangalore. You can, we can be proud of it. So I think so what we did that we really used the talent management to think about how to retain the people and how to grow them and how to increase their potentials also.
Right.
So we have undergone a lot of training. We've been sending to our different domain in the Europe to send for 3 months, 6 months training. That made them feel a part of the family for the long term, and also to get accustomed that they have to work on a lot of technology to be really becoming an expert in aviations.
Right.
India started very late, but I think so we are helping a lot to grow in that area.
Okay, because Adam, let me go back to you. We were talking about the life cycle of an employee, and as he starts, there are different issues, and as he further progresses, and that's the perception that that's perhaps where the gap starts growing.
That's right.
In terms of his ambitions or his perceived potential vis-a-vis what the company sees. So how will technology help in bridging that?
Yeah, so I mean, to your point, almost every company trains new employees, right? Your first week on the job, your first month, you're getting a lot of support, you're getting a lot of training. Now, technology can help make that training more homogeneous and more consistent so that the best way of training somebody at a retail chain would be consistent from store to store. That's the first place. The second place, though, is over time, the employee wants to grow, they want to move up, but how do they know what to take? How do they know how to learn? So giving them an ability to keep developing over time. Helping an employee through machine learning, perhaps, understand what are career path options. Because maybe your manager doesn't know the next best place for you.
Right.
So giving more options to the employee. And when you think about mobility in an organization, often if a company is in one office, the manager knows the people in that office. So if an opening happens, they maybe think about the other people in the office that could fill the opening, but that's it. But maybe the best person for a French company is based in Bangalore.
Right.
So how does the person in Paris know that the best possible fit is somebody in Bangalore? You need technology to allow for that.
Is it really as simple as that? Especially, I'm just asking you to draw upon your experiences when you, for instance, address the Asia Pacific market, and especially this part of the region, because as I was discussing with my panelists to my left, that in India we are told just put your head down, work hard, and you'll be recognized for your work. Networking is not really a big part, or it doesn't come naturally. We are learning, but it's a slow learning curve.
Yeah, so that is the way most of the world works.
Right.
Right? You get paid more if you stay longer. That's the way it works. So the best way to increase your role and your compensation is to work, right? Just be there, punch the clock. And the world is transforming. There's too much competition now for top talent. And the stakes are very high. I mean, we've seen this happen in India very quickly, right? The cost of labor in India has dramatically increased over the last 10 years. And it's because the competition is expanded, right? People realize there's a talent pool, there's more companies being formed here, there's more companies coming here. Cornerstone has offices both in Mumbai and Bangalore. Why? Because great source of talent.
Right.
But as you have more sources of talent, you also have more demand for that talent. And there isn't that much experienced labor. So companies need to wake up and realize that if they don't have ways to optimize and mobilize that talent, they will lose it. Because the tools to find that talent have gotten much better.
But a lot of companies might say that, listen, I am already using a lot of tools. Maybe many companies might not actually recognize the problem per se, especially as they gain in scale, because they feel, they are seeing the returns, they are doing relatively well, but actually the malaise is already setting in. Betty, would you say that Indian companies are in the danger of entering that zone, and if so, how are they addressing it?
No, on the contrary, going back to what was being discussed, there are two important points that I want to talk about. One is this whole about global mobility, what Adam talked about. So I think it's very, very pertinent to understand that if